Elena Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the Regency Grand Hotel, never imagining that a wrong turn would lead her into the private suite of Prince Khalid al-Rahman. She didn't know that behind those gilded doors, the wealthiest man in the city was breaking down, confessing his deepest shame to his advisors. She didn't know that the fragments of conversation she'd overhear about a dying child, a desperate search, and a father's unbearable guilt would haunt her for days. And she certainly didn't know that her small act of kindness, born from those stolen words, would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives forever, proving that sometimes the most powerful connections are forged in the most unexpected moments. Elena Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the Regency Grand Hotel, never imagining that a wrong turn would lead her into the private suite of Prince Khalid al-Rahman. She didn't know that behind those gilded doors, the wealthiest man in the city was breaking down, confessing his deepest shame to his advisors. She didn't know that the fragments of conversation she'd overhear about a dying child, a desperate search, and a father's unbearable guilt would haunt her for days. And she certainly didn't know that her small act of kindness, born from those stolen words, would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives forever, proving that sometimes the most powerful connections are forged in the most unexpected moments. The alarm clock's shrill cry cut through the darkness at 4 a.m, and Elena's hand shot out to silence it before it could wake her children. She lay there for just a moment, gathering strength from somewhere deep within, then swung her legs out of bed. Her body ached from yesterday's double shift, but there was no time for rest. There were mouths to feed, rent to pay, and medicine to buy. She moved quietly through the small apartment, stepping over the stack of past-due notices she'd shoved under the coffee table the night before. 3 months behind on rent now. The eviction warning had arrived last week, printed on pink paper, as if the cheerful color could soften the blow. In the narrow kitchen, Elena prepared breakfast with practiced efficiency. Oatmeal for Miguel, her 10-year-old son who ate like he was hollow inside. Toast with a thin scrape of butter for 8-year-old Sofia, whose asthma medication cost more than Elena made in a week. She'd have to refill the prescription in 3 days. The thought sat in her stomach like a stone. Elena packed their lunches, left notes reminding them to lock the door, and kissed their sleeping foreheads before slipping out into the cold morning darkness. 2 buses, and 90 minutes later, she arrived at the Regency Grand Hotel, where crystal chandeliers sparkled over marble floors, and the air itself seemed perfumed with wealth. She changed into her uniform in the staff locker room, where Maria was already pinning up her hair. The other woman smiled warmly. "Elena, you look exhausted. I can cover your 3rd floor if you need a break later." Elena squeezed her friend's hand gratefully. "You're too kind. But I'm fine. I can handle it." That was Elena's way. Despite everything, she carried herself with quiet dignity, took pride in making each room spotless, and never complained. The other housekeeping staff respected her for it. She was the first to help when someone fell behind, the last to leave at the end of a shift. At the morning briefing, the supervisor's voice cut through the chatter. "Martinez, you're on penthouse level today." Elena's head snapped up. The penthouse level was usually off-limits, reserved only for senior staff when the hotel hosted royalty or billionaires. Something important must be happening. She nodded, gathered her supplies, and headed for the elevator, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just 1 click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. Prince Khalid al-Rahman arrived at the Regency Grand Hotel shortly after dawn, though no one would have called it an arrival so much as an invasion. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the private entrance, disgorging a small army of security personnel who swept through the lobby with practiced efficiency. The hotel manager, Mr. Pemberton, hovered nervously as men in dark suits secured the elevators, checked the stairwells, and posted guards at every access point to the penthouse level. The prince himself emerged last, a figure of impossible wealth and power, heir to one of the most prominent royal families in the Arab world. At 32 years old, Khalid al-Rahman commanded a fortune that could buy small countries. His face had graced magazine covers and charity galas across the globe. Progressive, compassionate, forward-thinking. The media called him a leader for a new generation. He funded hospitals, built schools, and spoke eloquently about education and human rights. The world saw a man who had everything. But the man who walked through the hotel's gilded doors that morning was hollow. His eyes, dark and sunken, held no light. His movements were mechanical, his responses to his staff's greetings merely automatic. He barely glanced at the opulent surroundings. The fresh flowers arranged in his suite, the imported coffee waiting on silver trays. Rashid, his chief advisor and closest confidant, walked 2 steps behind, watching the prince with growing concern. He'd known Khalid since they were boys, had seen him weather scandals and pressures that would break lesser men. But this was different. This was a man being slowly crushed under the weight of something money and power could not fix. The meeting today was urgent, personal, and utterly private. No press, no officials, no distractions. They needed to discuss the situation that had brought the prince to his knees, the crisis that had stripped away his careful composure and revealed the frightened, desperate man beneath. As hotel staff rushed to accommodate every need, Rashid issued the final directive to Mr. Pemberton in a tone that allowed no argument. No one is to come to the penthouse level during our meeting. No housekeeping, no room service, no staff whatsoever. We require complete privacy. Mr. Pemberton nodded vigorously, already pulling out his radio to relay the orders. The penthouse level was now closed, sealed off from the world. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, Elena Martinez carefully arranged her cleaning supplies, checking her cart twice to ensure she had everything she needed for the penthouse level. She thought of Sofia's wheezing cough that morning, of Miguel's shoes that were 2 sizes too small, of the pink eviction notice waiting at home. She thought of how one mistake, one complaint, could cost her this job and everything that depended on it. She took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and pushed her cart toward the service elevator, ready to work. Elena finished the regular floors by early afternoon, her movements efficient from years of practice. She ducked into a service corridor for a brief rest, leaning against the cool wall and closing her eyes for just a moment. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The school's number flashed on the screen, and her heart dropped. Miss Martinez, this is Nurse Stevens from Riverside Elementary. Sofia had an asthma attack during recess. She's stable now, but you need to come pick her up immediately. Elena's hands shook as she clutched the phone. I'll be right there. She ran to find her supervisor, words tumbling out in a rush. My daughter, she's sick. I need to leave, please. It's an emergency. The supervisor, Mrs. Chen, barely looked up from her clipboard. Absolutely not. We're short-staffed today and we have a VIP on the premises. If you leave, don't bother coming back. Elena felt the room tilt. But she's only 8. She needs me. Then you should have arranged better childcare. We all have problems, Martinez. Stay or lose your job. Elena stood frozen, her daughter's frightened face flashing through her mind. Then the eviction notice. The empty refrigerator. Miguel's worn shoes. She needed this job, but Sofia needed her mother. She turned and ran, her supervisor's threats following her down the hallway. Elena's mind raced as fast as her feet. She needed to get to the employee exit, needed to reach Sofia. But panic made her clumsy, disoriented. She took what she thought was a shortcut through corridors she'd never walked before. The penthouse level. She'd been assigned here but hadn't actually started work yet. Everything looked different. More opulent, more confusing. Plush carpet muffled her footsteps. Gold-framed mirrors reflected her frightened face. Where was the exit? She turned corner after corner, growing more desperate. Then she heard voices. Low, serious, speaking in accented English. She moved toward the sound, thinking she could ask for directions. But as she approached the partially open door, something in the tone made her freeze. The formality, the gravity, the careful deference in one man's voice addressing another. This wasn't a normal conversation. This was the prince's suite. She should leave immediately, but Sofia's scared face filled her mind, and she needed to find the exit. Just as she raised her hand to knock, words from inside the room stopped her cold. Elena stood paralyzed outside the door, her hand frozen mid-air, afraid to interrupt what was clearly a deeply private moment. The voice that came from within was raw, stripped of all the polish and authority she'd expected from royalty. "I failed him, Rashid. My own son." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena's breath caught in her throat as more fragments drifted through the opening. 8 years old, the voice continued, breaking on the words. Rare blood disease. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and I was traveling, building my empire, missing every sign. I wasn't there. Another voice responded, older, gentler, filled with compassion. Your Highness, you cannot blame yourself for what you did not know. But the prince's anguish only deepened. His mother, Layla, she was my first love, Rashid. Before duty, before the throne, before everything else consumed me. I chose responsibility over her. I chose my family's expectations over my own heart. She raised him alone after I walked away. The confession poured out like blood from a wound. She never told me about him. Not for 8 years. Not until 3 months ago when he got sick and she had no choice. And now she's gone too. Died last month. Cancer. Adam thinks I abandoned them both, and he's right. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face as the full horror of the story unfolded. The prince's voice cracked completely. He won't accept my marrow. My own son. Dying. And he refuses my help. He says he doesn't need anything from the father, who was never there. How do I argue with that? How do I tell him I love him when I proved the opposite for 8 years? Elena heard movement inside, footsteps pacing. I've searched the international registry, contacted every hospital, every specialist. No matches. His blood type is too rare. He has weeks, maybe a month, if we're lucky. Every word carried the weight of unbearable guilt and desperate, helpless love. Elena's tears fell freely now, silent and hot. For this man she'd never met, and his dying child. For a mother named Layla who'd carried her secrets to the grave. For a little boy who was too angry to let his father save him. She shifted her weight, trying to compose herself, and her shoulder bumped the door. It creaked, swinging open wider. Elena's eyes went wide with horror as she saw inside the suite for the first time. There, in a room filled with priceless art and furniture, surrounded by every luxury money could buy, sat Prince Khalid al-Rahman with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking, utterly and completely broken. Prince Khalid's head snapped up sharply, his dark eyes red-rimmed and filled with pain, landing directly on Elena frozen in the doorway. For a moment, time stopped. 2 security guards materialized from somewhere in the suite, moving swiftly to intercept her, their hands already reaching to escort this intruder away from their vulnerable prince. But Khalid raised one hand, stopping them mid-stride. He studied Elena's face, took in her tear-stained cheeks, her work uniform, the way her hand still covered her mouth in horror at what she'd witnessed. She wasn't a threat. She was simply a woman who'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare. Elena found her voice, words tumbling out in a desperate mixture of broken Arabic and English. I'm so sorry. Your Highness, I'm lost. I was looking for the exit. My daughter is sick. I didn't mean to intrude. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. The apologies kept coming, her hands trembling as she backed away. The prince simply waved his hand in a gesture of exhausted dismissal, too drained to care about protocol or privacy anymore. What did it matter? One more person knew his shame. He turned away, returning to his private agony. Rashid moved quickly, taking Elena firmly by the elbow and guiding her out of the suite and down the corridor. His voice was low and stern as they walked. What you heard in that room stays in that room. Do you understand? Your job? Your livelihood? Everything depends on your silence. Elena nodded vigorously, still shaking. I won't say anything. I promise. I swear. Rashid studied her face for a long moment, then released her arm and pointed toward the service elevator. That way leads to the exit. Elena fled, her heart pounding, returning to work in a complete daze. She went through the motions of cleaning rooms, changing linens, scrubbing bathrooms. But her mind was elsewhere. The prince's broken voice echoed in her head. 8 years old, rare blood disease. No matches, weeks, maybe. During her lunch break, Elena pulled out her phone and began searching. Bone marrow donation, registry, rare blood types. She read about the process, about how difficult matches could be, about how some people searched for years and never found a donor. She learned about the testing, the waiting lists, the miracle of compatibility. Her phone rang. The school again. Miss Martinez, Sofia really needs to go home. She's having trouble breathing. Elena didn't hesitate this time. She grabbed her coat, ignored Mrs. Chen's furious shouts about abandonment and termination, and ran for the exit. Her daughter needed her. Nothing else mattered. Elena burst through the school doors and found Sofia sitting in the nurse's office, her small chest rising and falling with labored breaths. She gathered her daughter into her arms, whispering soft reassurances in Spanish as Sofia's wheezing gradually slowed. They took the bus to the pharmacy, where Elena stood at the counter counting out coins for the asthma medication, her fingers sorting through pennies and dimes, while the pharmacist waited with thinly veiled impatience. As she counted, Elena thought of another child somewhere in this city. A little boy named Adam, who needed something far more precious than medicine from a bottle. A boy whose mother had died carrying the secret of his existence, whose father had discovered him only in time to watch him slip away. Sofia tugged on her sleeve as they left the pharmacy. Mama, why are you crying? Elena hadn't even realized tears were streaming down her face. She knelt down, wiping her eyes quickly. I'm just tired, mi amor. That's all. But it wasn't exhaustion that made her cry. It was the realization that somewhere a mother's last wish had been for her child to be saved. And Elena had the power to honor that wish. That night, after putting Sofia and Miguel to bed, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table with her phone, researching bone marrow donation centers. She learned she could get tested for free at a clinic just 3 miles away. The possibility felt like a lifeline thrown across an impossible distance. Maria, her roommate and closest friend, came out for water and found Elena still awake at 2 a.m. What's troubling you? You haven't been yourself since yesterday. Elena couldn't share the details, couldn't betray the prince's privacy. But she said quietly, There's a little boy who needs help. I might be able to help him. Maria sat down heavily, concern etched on her face. Elena, you can barely help your own children. You can't save everyone. The words were meant with love, but they stung. Elena looked up, meeting her friend's eyes. What if someone could save Sofia, but chose not to? What if they walked away because it was inconvenient? Maria had no answer to that. The next morning, before her shift at the hotel, Elena went to the donation center. She filled out forms with trembling hands, answered questions about her medical history, and sat quietly while a nurse drew vial after vial of blood for the registry. The nurse smiled kindly as she labeled the tubes. Matches are rare, dear. You might never be called. You could be on this registry for years and never hear anything. Elena nodded, accepting the reality. But at least I tried. At least I gave him a chance. She returned to work expecting to be fired for yesterday's abandonment. Instead, Mrs. Chen called her into the office with a cold smile. You're being reassigned permanently to the night shift. 10 at night to 6 in the morning. Lower pay grade. Elena's heart sank. Night shift meant she'd barely see her children, meant even less money when they desperately needed more. It meant sleeping while they were at school and working while they slept. But she simply nodded. I understand. She'd known there would be a cost. She'd chosen to pay it anyway. 2 weeks passed with no word from the donation center, and Elena settled into the grueling rhythm of night shift. She pushed her cart through empty conference rooms and silent lobbies, while the rest of the city slept, her only companions, the security guards, and the ghostly echo of her own footsteps on marble floors. The hotel at night was a different world, hollowed out and waiting, and Elena moved through it like a shadow. Occasionally, she saw news coverage playing on the televisions in the executive lounge, and sometimes Prince Khalid's face would appear on the screen. He was at a hospital opening, cutting a ribbon with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was at a children's charity gala, shaking hands and making speeches about hope and healing. But Elena saw what others might miss: the searching quality in his gaze, the way he looked at every child as if measuring them against the one he was losing. She wondered about Adam constantly, prayed for him during her bus rides and her brief moments of rest. Meanwhile, her own life grew harder. Sofia's asthma worsened with the changing season, requiring more frequent treatments and stronger medications. The medical bills piled up on the kitchen table like accusations. Elena picked up a third part-time job cleaning offices on weekends, which meant she now worked 7 days a week, sleeping in stolen hours between shifts. Exhaustion became her constant companion, a weight she carried in her bones. One night, while cleaning the hotel library, Elena found a discarded newspaper on one of the leather chairs. She almost threw it away, but a headline caught her eye. Prince Khalid's rare blood type complicates search for donor. Her hands shook as she read the article. The prince had a rare blood type, AB negative with additional rare antigens, likely passed to his son. The international search had yielded no matches. Time was running out. Elena's heart began to race. She pulled out her phone, found the photo she'd taken of her donation center paperwork, zoomed in on the blood type section. AB negative. Rare antigens noted. The same type. Her breath came in short gasps as the realization hit her. Could it be? Could she actually be a match? But then, logic reasserted itself. Millions of people could have this blood type. The world was vast. The chances of her being the specific match this child needed were astronomical. She was letting hope run away with her, building castles from coincidence. Elena folded the newspaper carefully and placed it in her cart. She wouldn't let herself dream. Dreams were dangerous things for people like her. Elena was mopping the hotel lobby at 2 a.m. The smell of cleaning solution sharp in her nostrils. When her phone rang, she almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors, and she had nothing to tell them that would make a difference. But something made her pull off her gloves and swipe the screen. Miss Martinez? This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Bone Marrow Registry. Elena's heart stopped. The mop clattered to the floor. Forgotten. We have a match for you. A critically urgent case. An 8-year-old boy. The world tilted sideways. Elena gripped the edge of her cleaning cart to steady herself, her voice barely a whisper. When? Dr. Chen's calm, professional tone continued. We'll need to do more comprehensive testing. A full physical examination. There are possible complications we need to discuss. The donation process itself carries some risks, and you'll need time to recover. We should schedule an appointment to go over everything in detail. Elena interrupted, her voice suddenly strong and clear. When can we start? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Dr. Chen spoke again, her professional composure had cracked just slightly, moved by the immediate certainty in Elena's voice. Tomorrow morning, if you're sure. I'm sure. After hanging up, Elena simply sat down on the marble floor, her back against her cart, overwhelmed by the weight of what was happening. She thought of the prince's broken voice echoing through that suite. I failed him. Rashid. My own son. She thought of Layla, a woman she'd never met, who died carrying secrets and prayers for her child. She thought of Adam, a little boy who had every material comfort in the world but was dying anyway, angry at a father who'd come too late. Elena didn't know yet that her recipient was the prince's son. She only knew that somewhere in this city, an 8-year-old boy needed her. and she had something precious to give. When her shift ended at 6, Elena went home and called her supervisor. "I need 3 days off for a medical procedure." Mrs. Chen's voice was ice. "Absolutely not. You're already on thin ice, Martinez. If you don't show up tonight, don't bother coming back." Elena took a breath, and in that moment, she felt a strange peace settle over her. Then, "Fire me. This is more important." She hung up before the supervisor could respond, before doubt could creep in. Maria agreed to watch the children, her questions gentle and unanswered. Elena knelt down and told Sofia and Miguel that Mama had to help a sick little boy, that she'd be gone for a few days. Sofia, wise beyond her 8 years, looked up with solemn eyes. "Like when doctors helped me with my asthma? Exactly like that, mi amor. Exactly like that." Elena arrived at the hospital's donor center the next morning. Her hands steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. The staff moved with quiet efficiency, drawing more vials of blood, conducting a thorough physical examination, reviewing every detail of her medical history. Dr. Chen sat with her in a private consultation room, reviewing the test results with barely concealed amazement. "You're a near-perfect match, Miss Martinez. The compatibility is extraordinary. This kind of match is incredibly rare." Elena nodded, absorbing the information. Dr. Chen continued explaining the procedure in detail. "We'll extract bone marrow from your hip bone using a needle while you're under general anesthesia. The risks are minimal, mostly related to the anesthesia itself, but you'll experience significant pain and discomfort afterward. You'll need at least a week to recover, possibly longer." Elena thought of her children waiting at home with Maria. She thought of the 3 jobs she might have already lost. She thought of the bills that wouldn't stop coming just because she was bedridden for a week. Then she thought of Adam, of a little boy dying while his father watched helplessly, and the choice became simple. Let's do it. During the pre-procedure preparations, a hospital administrator in a crisp suit arrived with a folder of papers. "Your recipient's family has requested complete anonymity on both sides. You won't know their identity, and they won't know yours. All communication will go through the hospital." Elena signed the confidentiality agreement without even reading it. She didn't need to know who they were. She already knew the most important thing. A child needed to live, and she could help make that happen. A nurse came in to go over final details, mentioning almost casually, "This family has offered to cover all your medical expenses, of course, plus compensation for your time and recovery." Elena's head snapped up sharply. "I don't want money. I'm not doing this for money." The nurse's professional smile softened into something genuine and sad. "Miss Martinez, it's not about wanting. They insist. They're grateful beyond words. Please let them do this." Elena felt uncomfortable accepting anything, but she also knew her children needed her healthy and able to work. She reluctantly agreed to let them cover her medical costs only, nothing more. That evening, she was admitted to the hospital, given a room with a view of the city lights, and prepared for the procedure scheduled for the following morning. She texted Maria that everything was fine, sent kisses to her children, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, she would give a piece of herself to save a stranger's child. And somehow, that felt like the most right thing she'd ever done. Dawn broke over the city in shades of gold and pink as Elena was wheeled down the sterile corridor toward the operating room. The ceiling tiles passed above her in a blur, fluorescent lights creating a rhythmic pattern that almost hypnotized. She thought of Sofia and Miguel. Imagined their faces if something went wrong, if the minimal risks became reality. She prayed they would understand why she had to do this, why a stranger's child mattered enough to risk leaving them motherless. The anesthesiologist's gentle voice asked her to count backward from 10. And as the medication flowed into her veins and the world began to fade, Elena whispered the only words that mattered: "Save him." Meanwhile, in a different wing of the same hospital, Prince Khalid al-Rahman sat in a chair beside his son's bed, keeping a vigil he'd maintained for 3 days straight. Adam lay against white pillows, his skin pale as paper, his small body seeming to shrink with each passing day. The vibrant, angry boy who'd refused his father's help had been replaced by this fragile creature whose spirit was dimming like a candle running out of wax. Khalid held his son's thin hand, willing his own strength into those small fingers, bargaining with God in a dozen different languages. The door opened softly, and Rashid entered, his usually composed face showing cautious excitement. "Your Highness, they found a donor. The procedure is happening now, for the first time in weeks." Something flickered in the prince's eyes. Hope, fragile and terrifying, but hope nonetheless. "Who is it? I must thank them. I must know who would do this." Rashid shook his head gently. "The donor requested anonymity. Your Highness. Complete privacy." Both parties signed confidentiality agreements. The prince nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time the true nature of selfless giving. This person didn't want recognition or reward. They simply wanted his son to live. Hours passed in that liminal space where time loses meaning. 3 floors below, Elena's procedure concluded successfully. Dr. Chen supervised the careful extraction of precious marrow from Elena's hip bone, the cells that would carry life to a dying child. Elena woke in recovery, the world swimming back into focus through layers of fog and pain. She was aware of Dr. Chen's face above her, smiling with professional satisfaction. "Perfect extraction, Miss Martinez. The marrow is already on its way to your recipient. You did beautifully." Elena's eyes filled with tears that slid down her temples into her hair. "Will he be okay? You've given him the best possible chance. That's all we can ask." In another operating room, behind sealed doors and under the careful watch of specialists, Adam received the transplant. The life-saving cells that had flowed through Elena's bones, that had been shaped by her struggles and her love, now flowed through his small body. Searching for home, Prince Khalid watched through the observation window, his hands pressed flat against the glass as if he could push his own will through the barrier. He didn't know that the woman recovering 3 floors below was the same woman who had stumbled into his suite and heard his confession. The same woman whose tears had mirrored his pain that day. He only knew that somewhere in this hospital a stranger had given his son a chance at life, and he would spend the rest of his days trying to be worthy of that gift. Elena spent 2 days in the hospital recovering, and the pain was significant, deeper and more persistent than she'd imagined. It radiated from her hip with every movement, every breath, a constant reminder of what she'd given. But she bore it thinking of Adam, imagining the marrow finding its home in his small body, imagining those cells beginning their work of rebuilding what disease had destroyed. Maria visited with Sofia and Miguel on the 2nd day, and the children climbed carefully onto her bed, presenting drawings they'd made for their brave mama. Sofia had drawn a superhero with Elena's face, cape billowing behind her. Miguel had written, "World's Best Mom," in wobbly letters surrounded by hearts. Elena held them both, breathing in their shampoo-scented hair, grateful beyond words that she'd wake up to see them again. On the afternoon of her 2nd day, a hospital financial counselor arrived with paperwork and an envelope. "All your medical bills have been paid in full, Miss Martinez, and the family wanted you to have this." Inside was a check for $50,000 and a small card with elegant script, "For the gift of life, with eternal gratitude." Elena stared at the amount, her hands trembling. It was more money than she'd earned in 5 years of double shifts and weekend jobs. She thought of Sofia's medication, of Miguel's shoes that were always too small, of the pink eviction notice that had haunted her dreams. But more than that, she thought of Layla, a woman she'd never met who had died hoping someone, anyone, would save her son. Elena accepted the check not as the prince's payment, but as Layla's thanks. One mother to another. On her 3rd day, discharged and healing, Elena returned home. She moved slowly, carefully, her children hovering like worried little birds. Maria helped around the apartment, making soup, doing laundry, keeping things running while Elena rested. Within the week, Elena paid off every debt. She bought Sofia's asthma medication in bulk, restocked the refrigerator, bought Miguel new shoes and school supplies, and set aside money for emergencies in an account she never thought she'd have. For the first time in years, she breathed without the crushing weight of financial panic. But even as her body healed and her bills disappeared, she thought constantly about the boy. Was he accepting the marrow? Was it working? Was he getting stronger, or was his body rejecting this gift? She contacted the registry, asking if she could receive updates. The answer came back within hours. The recipient's family has agreed to share progress reports. You'll receive weekly updates on his condition. Elena pinned the first update to her refrigerator like a report card. And for the first time since the procedure, she allowed herself to hope. Weekly updates arrived like small miracles in Elena's mailbox. Recipient showing positive signs. Marrow engrafting successfully. White blood cell count improving. She posted each update on her refrigerator like a proud report card, reading them over and over while making breakfast or washing dishes. Sofia would stand beside her, tracing the words with one small finger. "Is the boy getting better, Mama?" Elena would smile, pulling her daughter close. "Yes, mi corazón. He's fighting hard." Weeks turned into months, and Elena's life transformed in ways both large and small. With her financial stability secured, she returned to work at the hotel, but negotiated easier day shifts instead of the punishing night rotation. She was gentler with herself, took breaks when she needed them. And most importantly, she was present with her children in ways she couldn't be before. She helped with homework, attended school events, and sometimes they had dinner together without her falling asleep at the table from exhaustion. Meanwhile, in a private hospital suite across the city, Adam's recovery progressed under the watchful eyes of the best medical team money could buy. Prince Khalid kept vigil by his son's bedside, watching as color slowly returned to those pale cheeks, as strength rebuilt itself in those thin limbs. The medical charts showed remarkable progress, but the emotional distance between father and son remained a chasm that no amount of money or medicine could bridge. Adam was polite, respectful even, but distant in a way that cut deeper than any anger. The prince tried constantly to connect. "Adam, someone very special gave you this gift, someone who wanted you to live." Adam turned away, staring out the window at the city below. "I know. A stranger cared more than you did." The words were delivered without heat, simply stated as fact, and that made them hurt even more. The prince's heart broke anew each day, watching his son heal physically while remaining emotionally unreachable. Rashid counseled patience during their private meetings. "Give him time, Your Highness. Trust is not rebuilt in days or even months. The boy has spent 8 years believing he was unwanted. You cannot expect him to forget that overnight." But the prince asked repeatedly, obsessively, "Can we not know who the donor is? I must thank them properly. I must know who saved my son." Medical ethics prevented disclosure without mutual consent from both parties. The registry maintained strict confidentiality policies. But through careful inquiry, the prince learned one detail. The donor is a woman, local, who asked for nothing in return. Not money, not recognition, not even acknowledgement. She simply gave and asked to remain anonymous. The information only deepened his wonder and his desperation to express gratitude. Adam was declared in remission 6 months after the transplant, and the word came through official channels like a benediction. The transplant was successful. Full remission. The boy would live. Prince Khalid organized a massive charitable gala to celebrate and raise awareness for bone marrow donation, inviting diplomats, celebrities, and medical professionals from around the world. More importantly, he personally funded a national donor registry, contributing millions to ensure that other families wouldn't face the desperate search he'd endured. He wanted Adam's survival to mean something beyond their own private miracle. Elena read about the gala in the newspaper on her lunch break, sitting in the hotel's staff cafeteria, with coffee growing cold in her hands. The article featured photos from the event, including one of a smiling young Arab boy with dark eyes and a shy smile. The caption read, "Prince Khalid al-Rahman celebrates his son Adam's recovery from a rare blood disease, made possible by an anonymous bone marrow donor." The article mentioned Adam's age, 8 years old, and his rare blood type. Realization hit Elena like lightning, stealing the breath from her lungs. Adam, the prince's son, the child from that overheard conversation, the boy whose dying mother had kept him secret, the son who'd refused his father's marrow. The child she'd saved was the same child whose pain had moved her to tears that day in the hallway. She'd never sought the connection, never imagined it could be him, and yet fate had intervened with impossible precision. Elena sat down heavily, the newspaper trembling in her hands, overwhelmed by the perfection of it. The way the universe had aligned. Maria found her 20 minutes later, still sitting there with tears streaming down her face. "Elena, what's wrong? What happened?" Elena looked up, her voice breaking. "I saved him. That boy in the photo. Adam, I saved the prince's son." Maria pulled her friend into a fierce hug, understanding flooding through her. "You saved a child. That's all that matters. Whether he's a prince's son or anyone else's, you saved a child who needed you." Elena nodded against her friend's shoulder, letting the truth settle into her bones. Maria was right. The identity didn't change what mattered. That night, Elena decided to keep the knowledge private. She wouldn't use it, wouldn't seek recognition or try to meet them. But she did write a letter through the registry, simple and short, pouring her heart into a few careful lines. "I'm so happy Adam is thriving. That's all I ever wanted. Live a beautiful life, sweet boy." The letter reached Prince Khalid through proper channels 3 days later. He read it repeatedly, studying the donor's words, the genuine care embedded in each sentence. The donor knew Adam's name. She must have seen the news coverage, made the connection. She knew who they were, and yet she asked for nothing, wanted nothing except his son's happiness. The prince made a decision, one that had been building for months. He must find her. Prince Khalid petitioned the registry through every proper channel, using both his influence and his desperation. He wanted to meet the donor, to properly thank her, to look into the eyes of the person who had given his son life when he himself had been powerless. Dr. Chen called Elena 3 days later, her voice gentle and understanding. "Miss Martinez, the recipient's family would like to meet you. It's entirely your choice. You're under no obligation whatsoever." Elena's hands trembled, holding the phone, her heart racing as the implications washed over her. She thought of the prince's broken voice echoing through that suite, raw with guilt and desperate love for a son he barely knew. She thought of Adam, now thriving, carrying her marrow in his bones, a living bridge between their impossible worlds. "Yes," Elena said quietly. "I'll meet them." A meeting was arranged at a neutral location. The hospital's family center, a comfortable space designed for difficult conversations. Elena dressed simply that morning, a clean blouse and her best skirt, her hands shaking as she buttoned each button. She told no one where she was going, not even Maria. This felt too big, too fragile to share. She arrived early, was led to a private room with soft chairs and warm lighting, designed to ease tension. Dr. Chen briefed her with professional kindness. "The family is extremely grateful, Miss Martinez. They want to thank you personally. Just be yourself." The door opened, and Rashid entered first, his sharp eyes assessing her with the protective instinct of someone who'd guarded the prince for years. Then Prince Khalid walked in, and time seemed to stop. Elena stood quickly, smoothing her simple dress with nervous hands. The prince stopped short, his eyes widening as he studied her face. Recognition flickered across his features, like lightning. "You," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "From the hotel." Elena nodded, her voice quiet and steady, despite the hammering of her heart. "Your Highness." The prince's carefully maintained composure cracked like glass under pressure. "You heard me that day. You heard everything." "I didn't mean to," Elena started, but he cut her off. "You heard my pain, my failure, and you—" He struggled for words, his throat working. "You saved my son." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't not try. He's just a little boy." The prince sat down heavily in the nearest chair, as if his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Do you know what you've done? You've given me a chance to be the father I should have been from the beginning. Elena's question came softly, but it carried weight. Have you taken it? The question hung in the air between them, honest and unflinching. The prince looked up, and in that moment he was utterly vulnerable, stripped of all pretense and power. I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying. But he's angry with me. Rightfully so. He won't let me in. Prince Khalid leaned forward in his chair, his hands clasped together tightly. Adam knows about the donor, knows someone saved him when I couldn't. He asks about you constantly, who you are, why you helped. What kind of person gives so much to a stranger? Elena smiled softly, her heart already opening to this boy she'd never met. I'd like to meet him, if he wants. He does, very much. The prince pulled out his phone, spoke quietly to Rashid, and within minutes the door opened again. The boy who entered was 8 years old with big dark eyes that held both wisdom and wariness beyond his years. He was still thin, his clothes hanging slightly loose on his frame, but there was color in his cheeks and life in his movements that spoke of returning health. He saw Elena and stopped, studying her with the intense scrutiny only children possess. Elena knelt down to his level, making herself small and unthreatening. Hello, Adam. My name is Elena. Adam approached cautiously, like a bird deciding whether to trust an offered hand. You're the one who gave me your marrow. I am. Why? The simple question children ask. The one that cuts through all pretense straight to the core of everything. Elena thought carefully, knowing her answer mattered more than any words she'd ever spoken. Because when I was your age, I was very sick too. And people helped me. Now, I'm a mama with 2 children of my own, a daughter and a son. I wanted you to grow up and have all the adventures you're supposed to have. All the birthdays and friends and scraped knees and first days of school. All of it. Adam processed this with the seriousness of someone who'd faced death and understood its weight. Did you know who I was? That my father is a prince? Not when I decided to help. I just knew you were a little boy who needed someone. That's all that mattered to me. Adam looked at his father, then back to Elena, and his next words came quietly. My mother died. Elena's voice broke, tears filling her eyes. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. You must miss her very much. She told me my father didn't want us, that he chose other things instead of me and her. The prince flinched as if struck, and Elena saw the raw pain cross his face. She chose her words with infinite care, speaking truth without betraying either party. Sometimes they don't know how to fix them, or they don't realize what they've lost until it's too late. But your father loves you very much. I know that for sure. How? Because I heard him before I even knew I could help you. I heard your father crying because he thought he might lose you. That's not someone who doesn't care. That's someone who cares so much it hurts. Adam's eyes filled with tears that he tried to blink away. He cried? The prince's throat was so tight he could barely speak. I did. Son, I do. Every day that you were sick, I cried. Every day I thought I might lose you before I could make things right. Elena stood slowly, stepping back to give them space. I should let you two talk, but Adam's hand shot out, grabbing hers with surprising strength. Will you come back? To visit? Elena looked to the prince, who nodded immediately. Desperately. If your father agrees, I'd like that very much. Over the following weeks, an unexpected friendship unfolded like a flower neither of them had planted, but both tended carefully. Elena visited Adam twice a week at the prince's estate, a sprawling property with gardens that seemed to stretch forever and rooms filled with treasures from around the world. She brought Sofia and Miguel, and the children played together despite coming from worlds that should never have intersected. Sofia taught Adam card games she'd learned on the street, and Miguel showed him how to make paper airplanes from old homework sheets, while Adam shared his collection of books about dinosaurs and space. The prince watched from various doorways and windows, amazed at how naturally Elena navigated his son's complicated emotions. She didn't coddle Adam, didn't treat him as fragile or special or damaged. She treated him like exactly what he was, a brave kid who'd survived something scary and was learning to live again. When Adam grew tired, she simply suggested rest. When he grew frustrated, she acknowledged his feelings without trying to fix them. One afternoon, while they sat in the garden watching the other children play, Adam asked quietly, "Do you have a dad?" "I did. He died when I was young, like your mama." "Were you mad at him for leaving?" Elena understood the real question beneath the words. "I was. For a long time, I was so angry. Then I realized being mad was making me sad. And he wouldn't want me to be sad forever. He'd want me to remember the good things and keep living." Adam nodded slowly, processing this information with the careful deliberation of someone twice his age. The prince, listening from the doorway where he thought he couldn't be seen, finally understood the gift Elena brought. Not just life through her marrow, but healing through her presence. Later that evening, after the children had gone home, the prince asked to speak with Elena privately. They sat in his study, fine tea served in delicate cups between them, the formality of it making Elena slightly uncomfortable. "You've done more for my son in 3 weeks than I could in 3 months, the prince said quietly. Elena shook her head firmly. "You're his father. He needs you, not me. He needs both. He needs examples of good people. You're the first person in his life who gave without expecting anything in return. The first person who saw him as just a child who needed help. I don't want anything, Your Highness. Khalid, please. Just Khalid when we're alone." Elena nodded, uncertain about this informality with someone so far above her station. The prince continued, his voice thoughtful. "I've spent my entire life making strategic alliances, calculated investments. Everything had an angle, an expected return. Then you simply gave. No angle, no expectation, no conditions. It's just who I am," Elena said simply. "I know," the prince replied, and something in his voice made her look up. That's what makes it extraordinary. 3 months after the transplant, just as everyone had begun to breathe easier, Adam developed complications. His blood counts dropped dangerously overnight, and alarmed doctors found signs that could indicate rejection. He was rushed to the hospital in the early hours of the morning, and the prince called Elena before dawn, his voice raw with panic. "Something's wrong. They say it might be rejection. The marrow, it might not be working. Elena, I don't know what to do." Elena arrived within the hour, still wearing her hotel uniform, her hair pulled back in a work bun. She found the prince in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. Security stood at a respectful distance, unsure how to help their prince in this moment when money and power meant nothing. "They won't let me see him," Khalid said without preamble, his voice breaking. "They're running tests. They won't tell me anything, except that his counts are dropping and they need to determine if it's rejection." Elena sat down calmly in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs and patted the seat beside her. "Sit down." Panicking won't help him. The prince sat heavily, dropping his head into his hands. "I can't lose him, not after everything. Not when I'm finally learning to be his father." "You won't. He's a fighter. How can you be so calm?" Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Because I've been here before, with Sofia. When her asthma was at its worst, and I thought I'd lose her. I sat in rooms like this, waiting for doctors to tell me if my daughter would live or die. Fear is normal, Khalid, but Adam needs you strong, not shattered." They waited for hours. The prince called off important meetings, ignored urgent messages from advisors and diplomats. Elena stayed beside him, a quiet presence, occasionally getting coffee or simply sitting in comfortable silence. She didn't offer empty reassurances or tell him everything would be fine. She simply stayed. Finally, Dr. Chen emerged, and they both stood so quickly they nearly knocked over their chairs. "False alarm," the doctor said with visible relief. It wasn't rejection, just a temporary fluctuation in his white blood cell count. "We ran every test. The marrow is holding. He's stable. The prince nearly collapsed, catching himself on the back of a chair. Elena's hand went to her chest, her own relief making her dizzy. They were allowed to see Adam moments later, and the boy was awake, looking small and frightened in the hospital bed despite being surrounded by the best equipment money could buy. Dad? Elena? For the first time since they'd met, Adam had called the prince Dad without hesitation, without the careful distance he usually maintained. The prince froze, the word hitting him like a blessing he'd stopped believing he'd ever receive. Then he moved to his son's bedside, his movements careful and reverent. Adam reached for his father's hand with the easy trust of a child seeking comfort. I was scared. Me too, son. Me too. But Elena said you'd be strong for me. She said you'd be here. The prince looked at Elena over his shoulder, gratitude and something deeper shining through his tears. Adam continued, his young voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry I was mean to you before. I know you love me. I know you didn't want to leave me and Mama. I was just angry and sad. The prince broke completely, sobbing as he gathered his son into his arms, careful of the IV lines and monitors. I love you so much, Adam. So much. I'm so sorry I wasn't there before. But I'm here now. I'll always be here now. Elena quietly excused herself, slipping out of the room to give them privacy for this sacred moment. In the hallway, she let her own tears fall freely, sliding down her cheeks as she pressed her back against the cool wall. She thought of Layla, a woman she'd never met but felt connected to across the divide between life and death. She wished the woman could see this moment, could know that her son was not just alive but loved, truly and desperately loved. If she could speak to Layla now, she would say, your son is safe. Your son is healing. And your son has a father who would move mountains for him. Your wish came true. In the weeks that followed the crisis, Prince Khalid transformed in ways that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. He restructured his entire schedule, delegating responsibilities and turning down prestigious appointments to prioritize Adam above all else. Mornings now began with breakfast together at a small table in the kitchen rather than separate meals taken in haste. He learned that Adam loved dinosaurs with an intensity that required memorizing dozens of species names, that his son dreamed of becoming an astronaut, and that he drew pictures of his mother surrounded by stars because he believed that's where she lived now. The prince helped with homework, fumbling through third-grade math problems and reading assignments. He told bedtime stories, making up adventures about brave princes who learned important lessons from wise strangers. Adam bloomed under this attention, under the love he'd been denied for so long, becoming more animated and open with each passing day. Elena continued her visits, and the gatherings evolved into family dinners, where the lines between their worlds blurred into something new and beautiful. Sofia and Adam became close friends, bonding over shared experiences of illness and recovery. Miguel looked up to Adam like the older brother he'd never had, and Adam relished the role, showing Miguel his books and teaching him facts about planets and prehistoric creatures. The prince watched Elena manage her children with such natural grace, correcting gently, praising generously, never raising her voice, but somehow commanding absolute respect through love alone. One evening, after the children had gone to play in the garden, he made a proposal that had been forming in his mind for weeks. I'd like to establish a scholarship fund in Layla's name, for children like yours, those who show incredible promise but lack resources. Elena's eyes widened, filling with tears. Khalid, that's beautiful. She would have loved that. I want you to run it. You understand these families, their struggles, their dignity. You know what they need because you've lived it. Elena shook her head. I'm a maid. I have no experience running anything like that. You're a mother who's navigated impossible circumstances with dignity and grace. You've raised 2 remarkable children on almost nothing. That's exactly the experience we need. Someone who sees these families as people, not statistics. Elena considered this carefully, seeing the opportunity to help families like hers, to honor Layla's memory through action rather than just words. Yes, I'll do it. The prince's smile was genuine and transformative. lighting up his entire face in a way his staff had rarely seen. "Thank you." Over dinner that evening, Adam announced with pride, "Dad says Elena's going to help other kids like us. Kids whose parents work really hard but don't have enough money for school and stuff." Sofia beamed across the table. "That's my mama." The prince watched this blended, impossible family, children from opposite worlds sharing food and laughter, and he saw the future stretching before him. Not the future he'd planned, full of strategic marriages and political alliances, but the one he needed, built on authenticity and love and the everyday miracles of connection. The anniversary of Adam's transplant was marked with a private celebration, intimate and joyful in a way that wealth alone could never purchase. The prince's estate was decorated simply with colorful balloons and streamers, a homemade cake sitting on a table in the garden, where the children played tag across manicured lawns. Adam was thriving in every sense of the word, fully recovered and attending school, making friends who knew him as just Adam, not the prince's son. He ran and laughed with an energy that still brought tears to his father's eyes. The prince had stepped back from many business obligations over the past year, restructuring his life to focus on fatherhood, and the change suited him in ways his advisors were still adjusting to. Elena now directed the Layla Memorial Foundation, a position that had transformed from tentative beginning to passionate calling. She'd helped hundreds of families access education, medical care, and opportunities that had once seemed impossible. She'd kept her modest apartment out of principle, but no longer worked multiple jobs to exhaustion. Sofia's asthma was well managed with consistent medication, and Miguel was excelling in a better school, talking about college in a way that made Elena's heart swell. During the party, the prince asked Elena to walk with him, and they strolled through the estate gardens, comfortable in their friendship, their shoulders occasionally brushing. "I've been thinking," the prince began carefully, "about how we met." "You mean when I accidentally spied on you?" Elena asked with a gentle smile. He laughed, a sound that came more easily now, lighter than it had been a year ago, when fate intervened. "What about it? You heard me at my lowest, saw me completely broken, vulnerable in ways I'd never shown anyone. Yet you never judged, never pitied, never used that knowledge. You were just a father who loved his son. Nothing to judge in that. Elena, this year, you've given me more than my son's life. You've shown me how to actually live it, how to be present, how to love without reservation, how to find joy in simple moments." She looked up at him, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "I need to tell you something," he continued, his voice steady but vulnerable. "My feelings for you have evolved beyond gratitude and friendship." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "I know our worlds are different. I know it's complicated. But watching you with Adam, seeing your strength and kindness every day, the way you navigate life with such grace, I've fallen in love with you." Elena turned away, emotions warring inside her chest. "Khalid, I can't just step into some ready-made role. I'm not asking for an answer now. I just needed you to know. To be honest with you the way you've always been honest with me." Elena faced him, her eyes searching his. "I care about you, deeply, but I won't be someone who fills a void or completes your redemption arc. I won't be convenient. You're the least convenient thing that's ever happened to me," he said with a soft smile that reached his eyes. "You turned my entire world upside down by simply being good. You challenged everything I thought I knew about what matters. I need time. Take all the time you need. I'll wait." They returned to the party, where Adam was showing Sofia his latest dinosaur drawing with animated enthusiasm, while Miguel asked 1,000 questions. The prince watched Elena with his son, saw her gentle corrections when Adam grew too loud, her warm praise for his artistic improvement, the natural maternal care she extended to all 3 children equally. He realized in that moment that he wasn't looking for someone to fix him or fill a convenient role in his life. He'd simply found someone who made him want to be better every single day. 6 months later, Elena had her answer. She invited the prince to her apartment, the modest space that was still her home, warm and filled with the laughter and life that money could never buy. Sofia and Miguel were at Maria's for the evening, giving them privacy for this conversation. They sat with tea at her small kitchen table, the same table where she'd once counted coins for medicine. And the contrast was not lost on either of them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Elena began, her hands wrapped around her cup. The prince waited, patient and still, hopeful but prepared for any answer she might give. "You asked if I could love you, if I could see us together despite everything that separates our worlds. Yes. My answer is yes, but with conditions." Relief flooded his features like sunrise breaking over darkness. "Anything. We go slowly. For the children, they've been through so much change and loss. They need stability." "Agreed. I keep my work, my independence. I won't be just a prince's wife, some ornament for your life. I wouldn't want you to be. Your work is transforming lives. That matters more than any title. And you keep being the father Adam needs. He comes first. Always. Always." The prince agreed without hesitation. Elena reached across the table, took his hand in hers, feeling the calluses on her palm against his softer skin. "Then yes, I'll try this with you." The prince brought her hand to his lips, kissed it with such gentleness it made her eyes sting with tears. "I promise to be worthy of you. Just be yourself. The real you, the one I saw breaking down that day. That's who I fell in love with." They announced their relationship slowly, carefully, letting the children adjust to each shift. Adam was overjoyed, bouncing with excitement. "Does this mean Elena and Sofia and Miguel will be around all the time? If that's okay with you?" his father asked, always checking, always making sure. "It's perfect." Sofia, wise as always, told her mother with a knowing smile, "I knew you loved him, Mama. You get the same look Dad used to get when he looked at you before he died." Time passed, and they blended their families with patience and intention, creating new traditions that honored both their worlds. Adam called Elena by her name but showed her the respect and love of a mother figure, understanding that she could never replace Layla, but could still hold her own special place. Sofia and Miguel thrived in their expanded world, never losing sight of where they came from, but embracing new opportunities with gratitude. The prince, now simply Khalid to those who mattered most, learned that wealth meant nothing compared to genuine love, that all his power couldn't buy what Elena had given freely. Elena learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, that she deserved happiness too, that sometimes the universe provides exactly what we need in the most unexpected packages. 2 years after that accidental encounter in a hotel hallway, they married in a small, private ceremony, attended only by those they loved most. Adam stood beside his father, tall and healthy and proud. Sofia stood beside Elena, holding her mother's hand. Miguel served as ring-bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness. The vows they exchanged were simple, honest, and real. Speaking of partnership and respect, of blended families and shared futures, of love earned through action rather than declared through grand gestures. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Elena walked through the wrong door and heard a stranger's pain. She could have walked away, could have stayed silent, could have protected herself from involvement in something so far beyond her world. Instead, she gave a gift that cost her dearly, but transformed everything. She saved a boy's life, and, in doing so, saved a family that was broken and bleeding. This is the power of compassion, the miracle of selflessness that ripples outward in ways we can never predict. In a world that often values wealth and status above all else, Elena proved that the greatest gifts come from the heart, not the wallet. Share this story if you believe that kindness can change the world. Subscribe to hear more stories of hope, love, and the beautiful unpredictability of human connection.